This is not Oklahoma Live. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Texas A&M Aggies Live, part of the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Cameron Honesty, joined by my co-host, as always, Cannon Torres. Today, we are joined by one of my College Wire dudes, site editor of Fighting Irish Wire, part of USA Today Sports, Michael Chen. We're going to preview Texas A&M's Week 3 matchup at Notre Dame. As you guys all remember, Texas A&M opened the 2024 season against Notre Dame, losing, I believe, it was 23-13. Wasn't the opening that head coach Mike Elko wanted. Obviously, they went on to go 7-1 before kind of collapsing down the stretch of 1-4. But that game has been in the minds of everybody going into the season, mainly because it is on the road in South Bend. A&M has not. I mean, going back to I think the back-to-back games they had in the early 2000s, I believe they lost that game on the road. I don't believe they won a game in South Bend for either ever or for in a very long time. It's one of the hardest places to play. Outside of Northern Illinois, I mean, they got it done, which was the most random win we'll ever see outside of App State beating A&M, but we don't have to get into that. It doesn't really matter because Notre Dame went on to the national championship game, almost beating Ohio State, who just had a little more talent than them. So really, no harm, no foul there. Nobody's really making fun of that anymore. But yeah, Michael, obviously the big news today was that Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach, announced that C.J. Carr, who's a redshirt freshman, is going to start at quarterback this year. Obviously, having Riley Leonard last season, the transfer from Duke, and I think everybody knows that Mike Elko coached him at Duke, so there's a connection there. Leonard had a hell of a season, passing for, I believe, it was over 2,800 yards and 21 touchdowns. He had over 906 rushing yards and 17 scores. Paired with Jeremiah Love, their star running back. This was one of the better offenses down the stretch. Obviously helped them get far into the college football playoff. But anyways, tell us what you think about C.J. Carr. Was this the right move by Freeman?
Well, first off, you kind of look at what happened with the battle. All the rumors, all the insiders were saying that Kenny Minchey, who ended up being QB2, was leading the competition. And I think it had to do a lot with ball control. The first open scrimmage that they had, Carr threw like 3 picks in the media portion of it. Minchey threw 1, but the coaches continued to say, "Hey, look, we're going to go back, review film. We're going to take a look at what actually happened." They did say that some of these interceptions that he threw might not be his fault. Maybe a receiver ran the wrong route and didn't get the right depth on going through. Maybe the defensive backs, who, let's be real here, Notre Dame has one of the best defensive backfields in the country. They just made a play. And those are the type of things that, the coaching staff was looking at, kind of going into it. My staff at Fighting Irish Wire, we all believed that Carr was the guy. And it was kind of surprising that Minchey was still hanging around because when Steve Angeli opted to transfer to Syracuse, pretty much everyone's like, all right, this is the guy, it's Carr, right? And for Minchey to not give up and to go through and to make it a battle, I think that you have to tip your cap to him, because at the end of the day, he could have rolled over and said, all right, this is the guy, this is the one that they chose, and I'm just going to kind of let it go, but he didn't. And I think that bodes well for the future, because let's be real here. If he struggles game 1 on the road at Miami, there's potential they could switch out. And I don't think that having 2 quarterbacks is a bad thing. I mean, we see it all across the country. A quarterback gets hurt. I mean, you guys last year, you made a change at quarterback as well. So it's always good to have a backup. But back to Carr, I personally think it's the right move. I do think that if you're looking at floors, I think Minchie is a higher floor to start, but I think the ceiling for Carr is significantly higher. I've known him since he was, between his sophomore and junior year in high school. I'm friends with his quarterback coach that actually is, I'm based in Chicago and he's based out of Chicago. So, CJ would come out for camps and that's how I got a chance to meet him.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Lost me there.
Yeah.
Everything that we've seen out of him early on, I think is kind of what you're going to expect. He's going to be a very accurate passer. He's going to be able to stretch the field. Now, I don't think they're going to take too many deep shots early on. I think they're going to try to get his feet wet, some short passes, etc. Some kind of dink and dunk here and there, but they're going to let him throw the ball down the field. Like Mike Denbrock knows quarterbacks. The offensive coordinator, he gets it. I mean, he had that battle with at LSU. Obviously, he went with the right choice there, and so that's why I think that you're looking at is Jaden Daniels, Garrett Nussmeier, right? Like he picked Daniels. Daniels went on to win a Heisman. He knows what to do and how to go about with a quarterback battle, and like I wrote an article last week said whoever gets picked as the starting quarterback, you have to trust what Denbrock is doing, and I think wholeheartedly, I do trust what he's doing. And Carr, I don't think he's quite the runner. He can run. Like, let's not be, he can run, but he's not quite the runner that you're going to like last year that we saw out of Riley Leonard. But I don't think that matters too much because Notre Dame's got Jeremiah Love, they've got Jerry Price. They're two guys that could rush for over 1,000 yards right there. They have backups as well. Aeneas Williams is a guy that I don't think has really made national headlines, but that dude is really, really good. So the backfield depth is there. So I think that they I wouldn't say they went with the safe choice. I think they went with the choice that's going to win them the most games. And, I think that Carr will be able to do everything that needs to be done in the offense. Now, is it going to be perfect right away? No, no quarterback is going to be perfect right away, especially, he had an injury last year with his shoulder, which limited him, which is why you didn't see him on the field. That's why Minchie got a couple more snaps last year than he did. But, both of them came into the season with virtually no experience. So there wasn't a guy that you could say, oh, well, he's played and he could go through and get the job done. Well, neither of them did. So, either one I think would have been a good choice. But, I've always been under the camp that you go with a guy that's going to potentially win you more games as a higher ceiling. And I think that's CJ Carr. And, not surprising, but kind of surprising how the whole battle played out because nobody really expected Minchie really to push Carr. And I think it was good for both of them because, iron sharpens iron. And you have a guy that could be the guy. And you have a guy that's going to be the backup clearly. And I think that both of them, if push comes to shove, are still ready to play.
Yeah, I definitely think the topic of conversation, especially going into that game, is Notre Dame's going to be coming off their bye week, which in week 2, right after a game against Miami. Meanwhile, A&M's going to have 2 games already under their belt, albeit that they're going to be coming off of UTSA and Utah State. So we're going to see 2 teams kind of already. We kind of have this outline for both teams a little bit, but I don't think we will have seen the full capabilities of either one by that point. Now, does that mean that we're going to be able to finally see what either side, maybe it is a CJ Carr finally getting that upside and that pocket passer that we didn't see last year with Riley Leonard. But I think what's interesting is that Notre Dame's now going with this more of a hopefully polished pocket passer than Riley Leonard was this past year, giving them that passing upside that they maybe didn't have because they did heavily lean on, the ground game and honestly the legs of Riley Leonard in a lot of situations. But I for one, I wasn't really surprised when CJ Carr was announced today on being the starter. I do think he gives them the best chance to win games, like you said, going forward, especially now with the team that they have. But a lot of that right now, a lot of their chances to win are going to be heavily like relying on this running back room, mainly Jeremiah Love. Now, Jeremiah Love, he's been kind of the clear-cut number one running back in college football, in my opinion. But I don't think a lot of people know just how good the people right behind him are.
Right.
So
Yeah.
can you kind of give us a little bit of where Notre Dame's running back room is and why people should be looking out for it a little bit more?
So obviously the backup is Jerry Price. He did really well last year. I spoke about Aeneas Williams as well. They got Nolan James, who's an incoming freshman, who's starting to make some noise. I think it's deep. I think they have a lot of guys that could rotate through and can do the job. I think it's you're looking at a room that's probably 4 deep. I think a good amount of those guys playing behind Love would be starting at other Power 5 programs. There's no doubt in my mind. The freshman James really kind of coming on. He was the Irish flipped him from Boston College late in the process, and he really didn't have a ton of like that recruiting love that a lot of other players got. But they started to come on towards the end. I think he was ranked in somewhere around the 200s, and to be honest with you, I think that was a big time recruiting win for them. Not the 5-star super hyped guy, but a guy that's going to come in and do the dirty work and get the job done. I think that's very similar to Aeneas Williams too. He's a guy that in his freshman year showed flashes that he could be really, really good. In the middle of the season, I was like, this guy has earned more carries, and I think that you'll see that this year. So I think that you're probably going to see a mixture of Love, Price, and Williams a lot. I think James will get in a few games here and there. My anticipation is they'll probably, if they don't have to use them, they won't. They'll hold them back for as much as they can and, try to redshirt him. But if push comes to shove and he's got to play, I don't think that there is that much of a drop-off between the top 3 guys and him. So the running back room is very deep. They've got a lot of guys that can get the job done. And I think you're going to see some 2-back sets as well with Price and Love. Love has been repping a little bit out at wide receiver. He did it in the spring. He's been doing it a little bit in the fall. And I actually got a chance to speak with him about that a couple months ago. He just signed an NIL deal with New Balance, and New Balance reached out to me, and I got a chance to speak with Jeremiah for about 20 minutes. And, that's one of the questions I asked him. I was like, so what's up with, you going and catching passes? And he pretty much said, hey, look, I did it in high school. He's obviously a home run threat anytime he touches the ball. And just to give him another opportunity to get the ball in his hands, I think is huge. I do think early on in the season, especially the first 2 games, his usage is going to be a lot higher. The Irish start with 2 tough games. They're on the road at Miami, and then obviously have the bye week before facing A&M. So I think that they're going to try and, if the Miami game turned into, a blowout, I think they'll rest him and get him ready for A&M. But, I feel like you're going to see him getting 20, 25 touches in each one of those games, because really the Irish schedule is front loaded this year. They got a lot of tough games early on. They go to Arkansas. They have Boise State. They do have USC. It's kind of in the middle of in the season, but the Trojans it's hard to judge how good they actually are, especially with a lot of the turnover that they've had. But, you're going to see a lot of usage out of him and Price early on. I'm not sure you're going to see Williams a ton. I think he might get 3, 4, 5 carries, something like that early on in the season. But, as it goes on, he's going to get more opportunities. And you're going to see there's going to be a lot of chatter about him potentially being the starter next year, because both Love and Price can go to the NFL after this year. And as a running back, obviously, as we've seen, you don't have a ton of bullets in your, in there. So you got to take the money when you can get it. It is a little bit different now with NIL, but I could see them, leaving and Williams being the guy that's going to be left over along with James. And you're going to see a lot of good players coming out of that backfield. So it's not just Love. A lot of people are like, yeah, Jeremiah Love. It's not just Love. There's plenty of talent in that.
Yeah, and A&M, has the same kind of situation at the running back room. I mean, they're dealing, basically they know that Le'Veon Moss is going to be the lead back. They're getting Ruben Owens back, who, like you were explaining with Williams, I mean, this is a home run hitting type of back who me and Cannon know watching his high school tape years ago. I mean, this is like Gazelle, just like you get the ball in his hands, he's gone. Nobody's going to touch him. Nobody's going to even get close to tackling him, but he's dealt with injury issues as well. And so it's going to be very interesting when both these teams match up because they're going to have similar game plans, I believe, that they want to establish the run early. They want to utilize that depth because Marcel Reed, for example, the system that Colin Klein is wanting to implement is, we're going to run the ball at will, but we're going to need you to hit those short passes. We're going to need to utilize the wide receivers, Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, who bring, the quickness and the separation against a Notre Dame secondary that is going to probably clamp down on that unless they get a couple big passes. So I think that both these teams are pretty similar in that regard, but I'm glad. Yeah. See, that's the thing. That's why I bring guys like you on here because when you look down the depth chart of these running back rooms, me and Ken have talked about it. I guarantee a lot of people even look at A&M and they probably just know Le'Veon Moss. Right. And then you look down, you even look at like E.J. Smith, the son of Emmitt Smith, who transferred from Stanford, and everybody kind of forgot about him. And again, we're all college football junkies, been watching these guys for years. And I remember how explosive this kid was just dealing with injuries. Now, Mike Elko has talked about how he's the healthiest he's been. He's looking quick in practice. So you gotta figure out how to use these guys. So I think Notre Dame and A&M have similar issues in that. Is like, we know we have two stars in Jeremiah Love and Le'Veon Moss, but how are we going to use the rest of these guys in the system? And yeah, it's going to be an exciting matchup. But I agree with you that Miami, Carson Beck has kind of looked like an interception machine at times. And I think that, if Notre Dame's secondary just kind of gets a hold of him, it could be very ugly very quickly. And I don't know if I think we'll all be watching, how good can Carr be to start the season. Right. Like you said, if he has one bad game, they've got a backup plan. And I think he has to have a really bad game for that to really be the case. Because you referenced, obviously, last year with A&M, Connor Wegman was dealing with a shoulder injury we didn't know about for a while. Granted, people were giving Elko some crack about that. Like, why didn't we know? Well, he didn't know how bad it was. But it was a situation that if Wegman was just not playing well and it wasn't an injury issue, I do think that Elko would have made a decision earlier and he would have moved on. They just didn't know what they had in Marcel Reed yet. And I think Notre Dame right now, they do know what they have in Minchie. I think they feel safer that he's a system fit. So, like I said, if both these teams get through their first 2 weeks and they're 2-0 going into that game, I think this is going to be an offensive struggle. And I think it's going to be the team that makes the most big plays through the air, has a couple big runs. And I could see this being like a 20-13, 24-20 type of matchup, or everybody's just scoring at will because they just kind of have one of those letdown games where one team scores and they kind of trade off, and could be very interesting. But just going to ask, and I guess Cannon was going to go on this. Notre Dame's offensive line, I do remember going into the season opener last year, we were talking about, all the rumors that, they were dealing with some injuries and that A&M, who had Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner at the time, that they were just going to feast on this O-line. Well, that wasn't really the case. They had some tackle for losses. They had some pressures, but most of the time, I mean, Leonard had time to throw. He had time to make his reads, and he had room to run. So I know they're returning a lot of veterans. I know they're still a little young in some areas, but just tell me how you feel about this O-line going into the season.
I think that the O-line is going to be pretty good again. Notre Dame has done a really good job traditionally with the offensive line, and it's not been, getting those 5-star guys. Yeah, they've had some 5-star guys. Blake Fisher, was a 5-star. He got drafted in the second round a few years ago. But like a great example is like Joe Alt. Joe Alt came into the program as a 3-star tight end, right? And they're like, look, you've got the frame to be an elite offensive tackle, and they made him into an elite offensive tackle. That young man was starting like day one and played for 3 years off to the NFL as a top draft pick, right? And they might have another guy in that, and Anthony Knapp. He came in last year. The talk was that Charles Jagishaw was going to take the starting role, but Jagishaw unfortunately got injured, which he currently is injured again. He had an ATV accident about a month ago, which is going to hold him off to begin the season. But Knapp is entrenched as the left tackle, even though he did suffer an injury late last year. You got Billy Schrouth returning. You got Ashton Craig in the middle. Right tackle, you got Emil Wagner. A lot of these guys are getting a lot of preseason hype because they were there last year. The one spot is right guard. There's still a little battle there. That's Gerby Lambert and Sullivan Absher. One of those guys is going to make it. And the unique part about what Notre Dame has done is they aren't afraid to play tackles on the inside. Lambert came into the program as a tackle. Jagisha also came into the program as a tackle. They have a 5-star freshman, Will Black, came into the program as a tackle. They're all repping it, all of them. And the position versatility, I think, is important for them. But, as a whole, as a unit, and they're really, really good. I mean, I don't think they get enough credit nationally for the development of these young guys because, again, like Alt, Knapp was a guy that not a lot of people thought of very highly, right? He was a 3-star coming out, and all of a sudden, as a true freshman, he's starting at tackle. Like, you don't see that too much. Usually offensive tackles take a year or two to get acclimated to the college game. He came in right away and was playing at a high level right away. So you got a lot of guys there, and the backups as well that can play. I mean, the O-line, I think, is too deep. They've got plenty of guys there that can plug and play. When Jagisha returns, I mean, that's just an extra dude, one that they projected as a starter. And so they've got a lot of guys that can get the job done. And like they showed last year, they had multiple guys go down with injuries, and they just continue to plug and play. Now, the depth, I think, is better last year. They had a little bit more experienced depth. They lost a couple of guys to the transfer portal who are going to be starters where they landed. So you're kind of looking at a unit that once again will be one of the top in the country. And I think that at the end of the day, they're going to open up holes, and they're going to give CJ Carr plenty of time back there to make his reads, go through his progressions, and get the ball out. I mean, it's another top level Notre Dame offensive line.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'll just let Ken get in on this after, but A&M's doing the same thing. It's kind of interesting because I keep seeing Notre Dame and hearing about Notre Dame's O-line, and some of the changes, like you said, trying these tackles out of guard and stuff. And it's going on at camp too. You got Trey Zune, their starting left tackle, taking snaps at center in practice. So when you've got Demetrius Crownover, who Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, he was a tight end. He's their starting right tackle. He's getting a lot of NFL buzz as a potential second, third round pick just because of his size and didn't allow a sack last season. So it's just very interesting when you have these 6'7" freakish athletes going at guard. And it was the same thing with Chase Besantis, who started his career at right tackle. I remember these fans were dogging that young man during his freshman year because he was struggling in one of the hardest spots against SEC opponents. Sure. You slot him in at left guard, he makes Bruce Feldman's freak list, and now he's regarded as a future lottery pick. So it's fascinating, the development with these 3-4. Yes, I mean, A&M has a 5-star in Lamont Rogers out of the 25 signing class. We'll see if he's a tackle or a guard. But that's another reason this game's going to be very exciting, because I think that if both these old lines live up to that potential, that's where I could see this maybe being a higher scoring game. Maybe these offenses just get comfortable, and they both have these dominant strengths in the trenches. And it is always interesting that A&M, after they hired Mike Elko, he's really starting to build in the trenches like Notre Dame has been known to do under any head coaching regime they've had. Sure. And it is cool that Marcus Freeman is continuing that, because I think it's what makes college football great, is that you always know the strengths that Notre Dame's going to have in the O-line, in the run game. They're always going to have some star. But yeah, I'm glad this matchup is going back and forth. But Cannon, do you have you want to end with maybe talking about the secondary? I know that obviously Notre Dame's bringing back a great linebacker core, great secondary. I think that they were ranked by Pro Football Focus as the number 1 I think they're below Texas. I think they're the number 2 secondary coming back. And another linebacker unit is just bringing back a lot of NFL type talent.
Yeah, definitely. I think that last year we saw, and it was backed up, that Notre Dame's defense was really like the talk of the town, right? I mean, all of their players on that defensive back unit were graded very, very high. I mean, you had Xavier Watts, you had Leonard Moore. You have all these guys, and I believe they had 6 players drafted in the NFL this past season, off the top of my head. So it's like I hear that Benjamin Morrison, you got Jack Kaiser. Obviously, you got players like Riley Mills as well, who was drafted last year as well. But really, when I do look at the kind of the depth chart, because you try and look at these matchups where does A&M's revamped wide receiver core match up with this defensive back unit, which is still going to be one of the best defensive back units that the A&M Aggies see. I'm kind of looking at where do they kind of pick their poison on which guys to throw to. I mean, we hear a lot about, I believe the guy who's going to start at nickelback, Devonta Smith. I've been hearing a whole load of things about Devonta.
Devonta.
Yeah.
I hear a whole lot of things about him. I hear a lot of things about Leonard Moore, obviously. But really, where are your thoughts at? Because from your experience, and you've seen the Aggies kind of revamp their wide receiver core this season with guys like Casey Concepcion, with guys like Mario Craver, and now budding star, hopefully. That's what they're trying to project with 5-star Terry Bussey, especially as a gadget guy coming out. So where do you kind of see these matchups in terms of this defensive back room going against the A&M Aggies?
I think that when you're looking at Notre Dame's secondary, I think that's the strength of the defense. I think that they've got elite talent, and like you mentioned, Cannon, they are replacing some guys. Xavier Watts won the Nagurski Award a couple of years ago. Benjamin Morrison was regarded as a first-round talent. Obviously, the injury to his hip pushed him down into the second round. But you're looking at guys that just emerge, and the unique part about what Notre Dame does on defense is they're not afraid to play true freshmen. If you're good enough to play, you're going to get in the field. And that's what we saw with Leonard Moore last year. And I don't think, if you asked me at the beginning of the year, like, is Leonard Moore going to play a lot? I probably would have told you no. But I know it's crazy, right? So he turned out to be a freshman All-American. He's littered on all sorts of preseason All-American lists this year. That dude's just a lockdown type of corner. The stats don't give it justice. I think he had something like 40 tackles and a couple picks, but he's going to shadow the top receiver on anybody else's team that they're going to face, and he's pretty much going to shut him down. He did a great job against Jeremiah Smith and Ohio State in the national championship game. I mean, yeah, Smith caught that one pass, towards the end, which kind of sealed the deal, right? But aside from that, he had a good first quarter and nothing really. He had the one catch in the second half, and that's all on Leonard Moore. You also have Christian Gray on the other side. I think he's a really good corner. I don't think he gets enough publicity. Adon Schuler, who was named captain a couple of days ago, he's going to be a really, really good safety. I mean, this guy's you could not mold a better looking safety. He's tall, he's rangy, he's got great instincts. He's a really good player. You got Luke Talich as well. He's going to fill in, for that Watts position. I think he's more of an in-box type of safety. And Schuler's going to kind of play out, back behind, significantly behind the line. And you've got young guys like Tay Johnson who could crack the lineup as well. So there's a lot of talent in that secondary. If I'm going to pick and choose one guy that I'm going to throw at a little bit more, I'm probably going to throw a little bit more at Christian Gray than I am going to throw at Leonard Moore. Devonta Smith came from Alabama, so he's good enough to play at this level. So I'm not super concerned with him, especially being in the slot and the nickel. I think he can hang with those guys, the quicker guys over there. But yeah, it's kind of like whoever might be having an off day, you're going to go kind of throw towards them. And this is no knock on Christian Gray at all. I think he's great. I think he's one of the better corners in the country. But, you're really going to test Leonard Moore all that often? I just don't think so. So, if you're going to pick one guy out of the secondary, I'd probably, corners, I'd pick Gray. But, if you're looking at, the safeties, I'd test Luke Talich. He played well last year, but again, the experience factor with him, it's not very high. And, I'd see because, if there's going to be a weak point, in with the safeties, it's probably him because I think Adon Schuler is going to be really, really good. So you're kind of looking at picking on those two guys. But again, it's not going to be fun for opposing offenses trying to throw the ball against Notre Dame. I mean, that secondary is elite of the elite.
Yeah, I think Ken and I can agree. I think that Colin Klein's game plan is probably going to be we need these tight ends to step up. We need these tight ends to go against smaller defenders and box them out. And, Amari Niblack, their transfer tight end from, not really from Texas. He didn't really do anything there, but from Alabama. It's very talented, working with the wide receivers a lot in camp. And I think that's just because he pretty much runs like a wide receiver, but he's still going to play that tight end position. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting because Concepcion and Kraber are more quickness. They're quick-footed guys. They're going to get open. I think KC is probably going to be in the slot, and he's probably going to end up being Marshall Reed's favorite target because of that short passing game, getting the thing rolling early, getting Reed some confidence. But if he gets backed into a corner, I think that they're really going to get those tight ends involved because we saw it with Theo Malin-Ostrom last year on the road against Florida. Granted, the defender fell over, but he had a big touchdown there. He's a huge target for Marcel Reed. Like I said, it's going to be all matchup driven because I think we'll see over the first 2 weeks, especially against Miami, because I think we can all agree Miami, I don't know if they're good or not. I really don't. I really have no idea.
It's a big question mark as of right now.
They really are. Because
there are certain things that I trust with them right now. I still just don't know what they look on the field, and I'm actually pretty excited to see them next week.
I am. I think it could either be a closer game because, maybe CJ Carr is just a little raw and he's not used to it yet, or I honestly think Notre Dame could just kill them. I think it could just be an ugly mess, and it could be the same thing that happened to Florida last year where you're all like, oh, the Florida program's dead, and after Miami went in there with Cam Ward and beat them up, and then Florida actually had a pretty decent end of the season, but they don't have Cam Ward anymore. He's throwing passes for the NFL franchise nobody cares about, sadly. But either way, this matchup, I think, and we'll end here and let you go, Michael, but I think for both these teams, this is going to be huge for either of them to get this victory. I think for A&M, if they can start 2-0, take care of business against UTSA and Utah State, getting this massive road win will just add to the momentum, add to the confidence. If the offense can move the ball against that defense, then I don't think they're going to be afraid against anybody in the SEC because they still, you got to think about it. They play Notre Dame, they get an off week. Then they play an Auburn team who I can't even not laugh anymore about Auburn right now because Hugh Freeze is going to play 3 quarterbacks. Ashton Daniels didn't even know he was still playing. I mean, he's the kid from Stanford. God bless him. Maybe he's going to be the starter this year.
At Baylor, mind you.
At Baylor, who has a very good defense. I think he could be very ugly, very fast. A&M is going to play either one of those guys at home, getting a little revenge after Auburn pretty much ended their season last year in that 4 overtime game. So I think winning this game, getting a break, and then going in this SEC slate is going to be huge. And I think for Notre Dame, you can agree that beating A&M, like you said, USD, kind of a mixed bag. The rest of the schedule is kind of iffy. You don't really know if these teams are that great or not, but we do know the strengths that Notre Dame has, and I think it'd be a similar run that they had last year to make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah. Super exciting.
I definitely think so. I mean, you look at the schedule, and even if they split the first 2 games, Miami and A&M, and they run the rest of the table, they're in. Like, I don't think there's a question.
Yeah.
Boise's decent, but they don't have Ashton Genty anymore. Again, USC will look good on paper because it's USC. But yeah, the rest of the schedule seems pretty light for the Irish. So yeah, they split those first 2 games, and they should be 11-1 or 12-0, and again getting one of the higher seeds of the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that this is not the opening game because I think that getting 2 weeks with these teams to really kind of find their footing, I think it's just going to make it more entertaining because I think last year I just hated that game because I just, it was like Connor Redmond throwing up and then he wasn't feeling good. And then it was just so low scoring. And I'm kind of sitting there. I didn't go to that one live, but I'm sitting there with my dad. I'm like, what the hell am I watching right now? This isn't the team we expected, and them losing Ruben Owens early in the season. So, knock on wood, both these teams are healthy. Both these teams are full strength. Both these teams are confident, and we're going to get a hell of a game. Which is going to be on ABC again this year, and it's going to be probably the biggest game, one of the biggest games of the year to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. But thanks again, Michael. That was fantastic, man.
Awesome.
We'll have to have you back.
Hey, anytime.
Yeah,
just let me know.
Maybe before the game. We'll see.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, and yeah, back to the salt grinds as we do at College Wires, where it never ends. But it's all fun and we love it. So
all right, guys, I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too, man. All right, that was great. So yeah, we got a lot covered there because I think it's always nice.
Thank you to Michael Chen for coming on today.
Michael's awesome, but yeah, I think we got a lot covered there. I think that when we look at the schedule, we're always going to look at this game first, even though A&M cannot look past UTSA. They cannot look past an early kickoff against Utah State, who's always pretty competitive. But yeah, it's good to get that covered. But so we're going to transition now, and we're not the first show to do this today, but I mean, it's really going to be talking about A&M's roster, and they got through their 16th preseason practice today, and a lot of it. So Des Ricks, one of the probable starting cornerbacks potentially for this team, he spoke to the media. It was also Jay Bateman, Texas A&M's defensive coordinator, spoke after, had a lot to say about a row of players, including Dayon Hayes, who's one of their transfer additions at defensive end, really talking about it. He's probably the most natural pass rusher on the team. But it had me thinking, there hasn't been a lot this offseason. I shouldn't say offseason, maybe the last 2 weeks of preseason training camp that outside of Marcel Reed, and we're talking about has he improved as a passer, which just gets tiring. We're not going to really know the answer to that until the games start, until we see it. But you're really looking at the roster, and we're hearing, even names like Dylan Evans, right? So Dylan Evans, redshirt sophomore defensive lineman who's beefed up. He's over 300 plus pounds. Our buddy Landon Ross has been high on him. Obviously, was very close to him in the recruiting process. Mike Elko's challenged him to try to earn a starting spot this year or earn a spot in the rotation. And I think he's heard the call and he's working hard. So really, I start to think of the weaknesses on this roster. And I mean, it's very hard to do now because I used to say it was the secondary. I used to say that it was the cornerback rotation. But now, I'm seeing, like you said, Des Ricks is improving. He's looking much better. Will Lee, obviously, the leader in that locker room. The additions of Julian Humphrey, Tyreek Chappelle returning. Obviously, you have guys like Bravion Rogers and Javon Thomas who are looking better in that depth area. So I don't know if I can really say it's a weakness. I can say, well, we have to wait and see with them as well. You look at the safety rotations, obviously with Dalton Brooks, Marcus Radcliffe making a big jump. He's getting bigger. He's looking faster. He's looking more in tune with what he's supposed to do. They've got some depth there with Miles Davis, obviously Bryce Anderson, who's I think really taken strides after playing poorly last season. But I guess I have to say it's the defensive tackle rotation. It's the lack of depth there because, you look at the presumed starters with Albert Regis and DJ Hicks. Two players, Albert Regis, more reliable. I mean, he's always been that reliable presence inside. I think he had about 30-plus tackles last year. He had 6 pass deflections. He's just been a good, sturdy player. DJ Hicks has not lived up to the potential yet. He's entering a very important season. And then outside of Tyler Onienum, who they added from the transfer portal, you and I both believe is going to be one of the better defenders on this team. You look at guys like Dylan Evans. You look at DJ Sanders, who's a freshman. Chase Sims, who's a freshman. You start to look down, and it could get ugly if this run defense doesn't look good early and these guys don't contribute at a high level. But really outside of that, because I know that the edge rotation with Cassius Al, with Rylan Kennedy, with TJ Searcy, like we said, Dayon Hayes, and Samuel Mbemba is very fast. It's freaky athletes. It's proven veterans. I think that pass rush will be better. But I'm going to see if you agree with me on that because I don't know. It's just hard right now because, outside on the offense, I can't really touch it because I do think they've improved in these areas outside of Marcel Reed, obviously doing that this defensive tackle rotation might be the, I guess, weakness on this team.
Yeah, I don't think I would necessarily say as of right now, because yes, we do have to see them on the field in order to establish a weakness per se. But I would say that I don't know if I share the same sentiment where it comes to I can't see one. I think that offensive coordinators and head coaches for other teams, they know what defense Mike Elko runs. They know he's going to be able to utilize that nickel cornerback. So what does that mean? He's going to be running more of that 4-2-5. Does that mean he's going to be utilizing the DBs as much as he did this past year? We have to wait and see. A lot of the times, what does beat the 4-2-5 defense? Literally running the ball away from the strong side.
Yeah.
Like you run weak side a lot, you utilize gap schemes, you try and get mismatches and unbalanced sets. That's how you beat a 4-2-5. Now, do I share the sentiment that the defensive line group, maybe the interior D line, is on par or even better than last season? I don't know yet. I do think that I've seen an uptick in what I've heard from camp intel on guys like Tyler Onyedim, like guys from Albert Regis. So I think that the run stopping up the middle is going to be on par with what it was last season, if not better. Now, the pass rush, I don't know yet. I really would like to see one of these guys, whether that's Cassius Howell, who's been getting a lot of media buzz lately, or a guy like Marco Jones, who was just named to the preseason freshman All-American watch list, or just list in general. So I think guys like that along the outside really need to show their stuff, especially in these first two games against the Roadrunners and the Aggies of Utah State. They need to show their stuff. They need to show that this full offseason, this full training regimen under Tommy Moffitt and Mike Elko really was what did the trick for them. I mean, you lost guys like Nick Skirton to the NFL, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart. And these are guys who are incredible talents, but you also need to be able to backfill, and they already had Cassius Howell on their roster. So can we see that level of jump? I'm really hoping so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just youth. That's the only problem. And that's why I said, no, I'm not one of those people. I mean, we've talked about it, ad nauseum, that I can't see a weakness per se. There's a lot of prove it, like we've discussed off camera. It's a prove it season for everybody pretty much. But I will say that Jay Bateman defensively, he was asked today about, Mike Elko taking over as defensive play caller. Credit to Bateman. He was very specific about, what we saw in 2021 when A&M beat Alabama, that incredible defensive effort where, I remember even the guys in the booth were kind of dissecting his defense, what they call exotic looks, really lining up pass rushers in areas you wouldn't think you could put them to obviously hurt the secondary in terms of getting guys open. But Elko's just a genius at that. And he feels, I think, as Bateman did say, you're going to see it's in bloom, right? You're going to see it more this season, because he was pretty much saying that they didn't trust the secondary enough last year, which he kind of went in. We worried about cornerback, which we understood after Tyreek Chappelle went down. We were lacking depth. They didn't know what they had in Des Brooks, who's still very young. Will Lee was brand new, even though he had a great season. He's brand new to the program. BJ Mays, who really stepped up later. They don't have a BJ Mays on the roster this year, but they do think that like Julian Humphrey is going to be a guy that's finally going to turn into that SEC starting cornerback that's going to be reliable, that you don't target, right? Not the guy you pick out to throw to. So I think that and that's the thing about this pass rush, right? Marco Jones being, and maybe we give credit to Jackson Cowley, everybody who's at On 3 now. He finally told these guys, hey, watch the film, because we always see that A&M guys kind of get left off the list. I am very happy that ESPN is finally giving Cassius Howell his due and talking about him as a high NFL draft, because he deserves it, and he's going to be one of the stars in this defensive line.
He's going to be a very, very big part of this defense.
Because that's the guy I'm thinking of, right? That's the guy that comes to mind. Marco Jones as well, because I do think that he already showed, kind of like Dayon Hayes, who's had 43 starts in his college career, that Jones is just a natural pass rusher. And I think that in those type of exotic looks, Jones is perfect fit, because you line him up somewhere where he's just going to be a standing pass rusher, and he's going to find a hole. He's got the speed and athleticism to get in the backfield immediately and wreak havoc. So let's just say Elko's got more toys in his toy chest. So I think that he's more confident, because it was always about solving the secondary depth issues. And obviously what I mentioned earlier, having guys like Bravion Rogers and Javon Thomas playing well, I think you can agree with me. That is the biggest thing to me, because because Thomas, we've been kind of waiting for him to take that next step. He's had his moments where it's kind of like you look at him and he's had really boneheaded plays and just blown coverages where it's like, okay, he's just a young guy. He needs to figure it out. but great athlete. Same with Bravion Rogers, who's from a very small school, has been in the program for a while, but it was every bit of almost a 5-star. I think he would have possibly been a 5-star prospect if he went to a bigger program, in my opinion. So the fact that he's really developing and looking very good so far. I mean, I've heard plenty of praise from guys on that staff. So it's fantastic. And I think that's the only weakness I really have. We go to the offensive side of the ball. And, we're just doing this now because obviously the season is less than a week. It's like a week and a half away. We are getting closer and closer, folks. But yeah, really outside of Reed, I start really dissecting, and we've done it at Aggies Wire where we go, one of my writers, Jared Johnson, credit to him, has done every positional breakdown. Fantastic job of that. You can pretty much find every position. I think it's at quarterback will release this week. But every single player on offense, and you talk about every starter, every presumed starter, these guys all have unique skill sets. And you look at this wide receiver room, for example. Yeah, you can say Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion are a little similar in their style play. But again, Casey Concepcion is an NFL-level wide receiver right now. He's the closest thing they've had to Christian Kirk, in my opinion. And he is a perfect fit in this system. He's what Colin Klein's been looking for. When he came here, he kind of thought Jabari Barber, he was a veteran who had a great career at Troy, could have been close. He's not Casey Concepcion's level, but he thought maybe he could be that type of guy. Well, he dealt with injury issues, came back late, had a good season, right? They thought maybe Cyrus Allen would be that quick wide receiver who they could rely on. But again, La Tech, Troy, NC State guy who was the most versatile and best athlete on their team for the last two years.
Yeah.
Proven level.
And look, I was one who I've seen the previous times wide receivers from LA Tech have transferred up and the success that they've had. I mean, you've got a lot of success, and it's actually kind of abnormal when wide receivers from LA Tech transfer up. But I was one who thought Cyrus Allen could be that dynamic playmaker.
Oh, I was too. Yeah, I was all on him. Yeah.
But this year, you are right. I think the level that has been upgraded at that wide receiver position is such that they can now have the breathability where it doesn't feel like they're having 4 yards of play every single time and can have these explosive plays down the field. We saw last year where a lot of the explosive plays were on the run game, right? Yeah. I mean, we saw a couple of deep passes, especially in that LSU game, Marcel Reed threw to Noah Thomas, that there were explosive plays like that. I'm really, really hoping to see that these wide receivers are able to catch a 5-yard slant, beat their defender, and then take it up the field. That's kind of what I'm aiming for when I look at this A&M wide receiving core as of now. So I think that if I were looking at it from someone else's, like a defensive coordinator point of view, I think you do have to get in that nickel formation sometimes and kind of bring the pressure along the outside if you want to stop the A&M rushing attack.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah, that's really all the explosive we saw was really that 1-2 punch with Moss and Amari Daniels. And that would have lasted, right? Because
it would have lasted a long time.
It would have. And I think you and I agree that if Moss did not get injured, if they would have lost South Carolina, who cares, right? You go on the next week, you get a healthy Moss, you're feeling confident because you're going to get back to that standard that you had. You're not going to really change your offense up a lot. And who knows what would have happened? I honestly don't know because maybe Marcel Reed gets even more confident. Who knows? Because a lot of pressure was put on him. It was a great term, their breathability. That is really the what they were looking for. Because the funniest thing and why I defended Colin Klein, I remember, I don't even want to go back, but I'll just reference it once. I mean, we want him fired. We want him gone. We're blaming him. And I remember I had to respond to people going, you got to really look at the season as a whole. And you can't blame him for anything. He didn't have a ton to work with in the system he wants to implement. And they can talk about Steve Sarkisian in Texas all they want. Great play caller, but we've seen what his offense looks like when he doesn't have talent. It's not great. It's kind of like what we saw with Colin Klein. So you got to give this guy talent. He finally has that level that he needs to. And we talked about Amari Niblack earlier that our buddy Landon is very high on him. You think he's high on Dylan Evans? He's even higher on Amari Niblack. So everybody in the Aggie media has kind of picked their players out. I can say that I think we share that Casey Concepcion and pretty much their entire O-line. That's where I'm just going to keep digging into is going to be the stars of this team. But But again, it's just going to be so fascinating what this offense finally looks like over the first 2 weeks. I mean, I have not been more excited to cover an opening season game covering A&M since my entire tenure. I really haven't been, even like last year, because last year after they lost Ruben Owens, I was kind of like, oh, this hurts their offense, right? It just hurts the depth, and I was always worried about that. And then it did come to fruition that it was a big worry. Right now, getting through camp, obviously, knock on wood, hopefully healthy. I mean, just the possibilities of what he can run, the possibilities of where this passing game can go, and if this run game reaches that elite standard, and the blocking is great up front, and Marcel Reed has time to throw, and like we said to Michael, get both Notre Dame and Texas A&M. The biggest thing with quarterbacks that there's still question marks around is getting rhythm early.
Definitely.
You get rhythm early. Marcel is one of the most confident players I've interacted with, that I've seen. This guy trusts his ability. He's not listening to people who doubt him, which is smart because, again, what do they know? Like, they're not in the room with him. They don't really know him. But he's just going with what he knows. He's been working on his skill set. He's been working with the coaches. He is not even close to what you'd call cocky. This is somebody who Jimbo Fisher recruited and loved, and Mike Elko and Colin Klein love him as well. And they feel that he is on the precipice of being that true dual threat. And I'm not going to say, never going to do it. Lamar Jackson, not going to say that. But again, if you want to be NFL dual threat quarterback, who do you have to emulate? Lamar Jackson, right? You have to be that guy who, as we know, Lamar Jackson, you can't pass. Well, he's now one of the most efficient passers in the NFL. So it's possible to become that player.
Yeah, definitely possible to become that player. I think tonight, as we wrap up the show, I think that I kind of wanted to take it on a high note tonight. So I was thinking I would put you on the spot where if you had to say one hot take for this upcoming season or this upcoming couple of weeks, if you had to make one hot take and something that's more abnormal, if you put money on it, what would it be for the Aggies this year?
So my journalistic non-hype, I mean, I guess, call it a hot take. I do believe A&M is going to be undefeated going into Baton Rouge.
Okay.
So that's where I sit right now, because look, a loss to Notre Dame could easily happen.
Yeah.
But having Mike on the show, who again did a fantastic job, and we'll hopefully have him back on either before or after A&M takes on Notre Dame. He really laid it out. Like, this Notre Dame team is very good. They're stacked at every level. Okay, well, so is A&M kind of in a lot of ways, right? And A&M has a quarterback who has seen it all. He has been thrown to the fire. He has played some of the best secondaries. You go back to playing Texas at the end of the year, being challenged more than he probably will ever be challenged outside of probably playing Notre Dame, their secondary. But again, that continuity at the most important spot, I think, just gives him an edge. And this is going to have to – and this is because I'm confident that this offense is just going to look great over the first 2 weeks. And I think that I always go back to when A&M lost to App State. I think of the game before that. And I think of how Jimbo Fisher – I don't forget, this was my first year covering them. And Jimbo Fisher just looked like, we are not good enough. He just kind of said that. And we're like, oh, no, I think they scored like 40 points or something. And it's like, he's like, no, we're not good. And then the next week they lose to App State. I have not heard any type of, but we're still questioning this and we're not sure about this the entire offseason. And you can say that that's what every coach does, but it's not. If you look at Hugh Freeze right now, we just mentioned him with Auburn. And we will, speaking of Auburn, I cannot wait to have Taylor Jones on the show to talk about Auburn very soon. It's going to be a very fun show, so you guys should tune into that. But he was asked yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, like, are you going to play 3 quarterbacks? He said, yep. Yeah. I mean, we have to. That if you are in a situation like that, you have to be honest. You cannot just say, No. I mean, because Jackson Arnold, former 5-star quarterback, didn't work out at Oklahoma, but man, he's going to an offense with Cam Coleman and Eric Kendricks and these two wide receiver, these future NFL first round picks and a good offensive line. And still, there's questions around him. That hasn't been the case with A&M. Marshall Reed's the guy. And he's not being challenged by, no matter what people on social media have said, he's not being challenged at all.
So you have the Aggies being 7-0 going into Baton Rouge.
Yes.
That is your hot take. Okay,
that's my hot take. That's as far as I'll go.
You have them going on the road to beating Notre Dame. You have them winning at home versus UTSA, Utah State. You have them winning at home versus Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida.
Yes, I do. Okay. And that's the thing. I'll say this. So Auburn and Mississippi State.
And then going on the road to Arkansas. That one's.
Yeah. Florida, I still give it to A&M because I think that they've kind of figured them out defensively. I think last year's game, in my opinion, I think their O-line is better than it was last year, obviously. And I think that they just destroyed Florida on the ground. I get the weather was different, and I get it was a swamp, and it was a sloppy game and all that. But I think they've got their number, and I think that DJ Lagway is getting a little overhyped this offseason. I'm going to be honest. I love that kid. I think he's going to be great. But I think they're putting a lot of pressure on him to be that guy after half a season, right? He was trading reps last year, kind of like Marcel Reed was. And it's not like he came into the program as the definite starter because Graham Mertz was just getting hurt a lot. And, because I honestly think if Graham Mertz didn't get hurt, he would have started the rest of the season. Now, granted, I don't know if they would have won all those games because, Lagway had a great year at the end of the year. But I just see this every year, right? They put so much pressure on these guys to succeed. The only one who's really lived up to it is Caleb Williams back when he was at USC because he's a freak, right? And he was in an offense that was tailored to his skill set to a T, right? Lagway, again, not sure about the head coach. I think the wide receiver rotation is pretty good, and I think that their offensive line is probably second tied with A&M in the SEC in terms of how good it should be. But A&M gets them at home. I think Kyle Field with the new LED lights, it's going to be insane. It's going to be freaking awesome. I can't wait to go see a game there, cover a game there this year. And I think that Kyle Field's going to have an even bigger effect this season because I do think the buy-in's getting bigger and bigger. And I think that, look, we can credit ourselves. We can credit all of us in Aggie media. We've been trying to tell everybody, it's okay to be excited. It really is because it's not like we're in a situation where there's so many unknowns entering the year. So that's why I'm confident there, right? And I could be totally wrong. And if I'm wrong and someone says, you're an idiot, what do you know? It's fine.
These are hot takes for a reason.
Exactly. I love hot takes, and SEC Unfiltered has made an entire business out of it, right?
I'll tell you what, I have one as well.
Exactly. I was going to ask you. So
I have one as well. So I think, and in the first 2 games of the season, I think that Le'Veon Moss, Reuben Owens, EJ Smith, and Amari Daniels will combine for 7+ touchdowns.
That's a good, I'd take that all day. If I was a betting guy, I'd take that all day. You know what? And I agree with you because I think that Amari Daniels is being slept on a bit because of the return of Reuben Owens. And so I think that they're kind of how's he going to be used? He's going to be used like he was used last year.
See, I think it's flipped this year. I think EJ Smith is the one being slept on this year. All the reports.
Oh no, I think they're all being slept on.
Is that EJ Smith? All the reports I've heard out of camp as of right now is that EJ Smith has not only looked the part, but he's also taken the ability to be that kind of dynamic person in the passing game, catching passes out of the backfield as well. And that's why I feel so confident about this running back room being that successful, especially because you have all these returners on the offensive line. The keys are all coming together, all the puzzle pieces. I just don't see it not working out on the ground game for them. That's why I think this hot take has a chance of hitting. Yeah.
I would say if we had one more, I would say that the secondary, I think the cornerback, I think Will Lee is going to have at least 5 interceptions. I think he's really going to up that. I think he's going to be one of the better. I think he's going to have a big year, and I think that's going to obviously help his NFL career. But I think in the sack department, it's, I've been trying to figure that out, right? I've been trying to pick a guy who could have double-digit sacks. I think Cassius Howe I think it's based on where Mike Elko puts him. But who's your best? That's what I'd ask. Who's your best candidate to have? Let's say, let's be realistic here, like 6 to possibly 10 sacks next season.
Okay. Tell you what. How about mid-season? So after the Arkansas game, who leads A&M in sacks at that time? Well, let's say that.
That's gonna be.
I have a person in mind.
I would say, I don't know, Deion Hayes maybe. I think last season before he got hurt with Colorado, he already had 2 sacks. He was on his way to being a 6 to 8 sack guy that season. So it could be one of those situations where Hayes isn't a starter, but he's a high rotational guy. He gets in there a lot. He's getting in second and third down packages to just go one-on-one with a lesser tackle. And I think that's really going to give him that boost. So who's yours?
I am looking. It's hard. It's very, very hard.
It's difficult because there's so many guys, right?
I do like Deion Hayes, but I think I'm going to go even a little bit hotter of a take. And I think that Albert Regis will lead the team in sacks by midseason.
Okay. If that happens, A&M's defense is going to be one of the best in the country. That's how I look at it. I'm looking forward, and maybe this could be a lot of sacks in those first 2 games. Yeah.
But I look at the interior offensive line for a lot of these teams that they're starting off against. I'm going to cut UTSA and Utah State out of the way. But we just had Michael on where we talked about Notre Dame's offensive line. They don't have any seniors along it, but they do have experience with sophomores and juniors along it.
Yeah.
I think if Albert Regis is matched up with either the center or that, right interior offensive lineman, I think he's able to actually get those swim moves over and get towards CJ Carr, who is now known more of a pocket passer. That's why I look at it like that. You also have guys they play Arkansas, Florida, and Mississippi State, not to mention Auburn. So I think those games you have quarterbacks, and I'm not gonna put Taylor Green in this conversation as someone who is more along the lines of trying to get out of that or in that pocket and deliver a pass. But Mississippi State, you have Blake Shapen coming back. I think you have Jackson Arnold, like you talked about earlier. I think these guys are going to take a little bit longer in the pocket, and that's why I think Albert Regis is going to be able to collapse that pocket, being as experienced as he is, and just get those sacks. Maybe that means he's in for a lot of half sacks. But I think by midseason, it's my hot take, and I'm going to stand on it, that Albert Regis leads the team in sacks going into that LSU game.
And I will say that is the hot take that everybody wants to come to fruition. Because if that happens, I mean, because that's the biggest thing I think we worry about is that interior going to get pressure? Because we know that pocket passers, quarterbacks cannot handle pressure up the middle. They just can't, because they can't get out and make a play like Marcel Reed can, where you can just split out wide and make a play with his legs. But I mean, Tom Brady, for example, every time Tom Brady could do everything. But you send a guy up the middle, like he hated Vita Vea. He could not stand him, even though he played with him. But he could not stand playing him when he did, because he just knew that, I mean, that once that pocket collapsed, I can't do anything. I can't run.
Ndamukong Suh.
And dirty player.
Still works.
He's interesting. But no. Good example, right? It's like having that bit, and Regis, I think, has the skill set to do it. And I think, like you said, getting Tyler Odiadam now in that mix. I mean, somebody who played in a I forget what Matt Campbell's defense was, but it was a 3-man rush.
Yeah, it's a 3-4.
It's a 3-4. Yeah, it is a 3-4. Yeah, but yeah, he's pretty much that's just taking up space, right? But I think I said this last week that when you are in that defense, you're taking on like 2 guys at once, and you're getting stronger by doing that. So when you go one-on-one with a guard, he's ready for that. He's just going to strip this guy away. And if you're inexperienced, and that's going to open it up for Regis.
I'm standing on business for that.
So and we're going to we need to mention Ali Deba. I forgot to mention that with the
LED Gate.
Yeah.
LED Gate. Is that what we're calling it?
I can't pronounce his name. But I'm still bad at it. But I think, so really, if we did our floors and ceilings for A&M this year, I really think ceiling is 10-2. I think floor is 8-4. I would say 7-5, but I just do not think this is a 7-5 team unless they're extremely injured and I mean key injuries, and they just can't get past certain teams that are just better than them at that point. But yeah, I would say 10. I would say ceiling 10-2, floor 8-4.
Gotcha. I'm a little bit more on the lines that because of the talent on the roster, I think it's a lot higher of a ceiling, but that floor also may be a little bit lower than I think. It's a very wide margin in my mind. I think the floor I think the most likely floor is 7-5. But I do also think the ceiling, the very high ceiling is 11-1.
Yeah, I could see that too.
That is a big proponent, and that's why I think the most likely outcomes this season are either 9-3 and 10-2. But you can't tell me that a possibility, whether it's small or not, that this A&M team could go 11-1. You could convince me if you sat me down.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's such a wide margin, and I am glad I remember I sent you that tweet, kind of the A&M fan base that's, very realistic, and 7-5 was kind of a conversation. And it did make me think, right? Where would 7-5 come from? And I've seen that movie before, right? And like I said, I think it's just bad things happening throughout the season. I mean, guys going down, losing key guys, maybe your offense doesn't, let's say this, maybe your defense just not live up to what we thought. Maybe your offense just is above average at best. And, I hate even talking about this, but Marshall Reed's not the guy and he's struggling still. And, you think you can have to rely on the run game, but the pass game just doesn't have any juice. And maybe, I would say an injury like a Casey Concepcion getting hurt early or something, having to miss time, stuff like that, I think would derail you to the point where road games would be a challenge and 7-5 would become a reality. I just think, and I've heard, I believe Tony Catalina had Travis Brown and Carter Carrolls and pretty much all the Aggie beat writers on a podcast the other day, and I was kind of peeking in, and Carter basically said it. I mean, he kind of said what we are all thinking is that in order for the trajectory and really the opinion, the wide, massive opinion on A&M to change, is, like you said, 11-1, 10-2. That would mean winning a lot of these road games, getting it done on the road against tough opponents in the SEC, and including defeating a Notre Dame in South Bend, defeating LSU on the road, possibly beating Texas and Austin in a year where Texas has been the most hyped team we've seen in a long time. Getting that done would completely change the trajectory of this program, especially getting into the college football playoff for the first time in program history. So 7-5 would just be going backwards completely.
It would be detrimental to what
it would be detrimental. I agree. It would be horrific for Mike Elko's future. Obviously, Colin Klein's future. If he's the butt of the failure, we'd see a ton of changes, and we'd see really a changeover again going to the offseason. We're not going to focus on that because going on the negatives is pointless before a season even begins. So I do agree. That's not being. I would say that both of us, that's not hyping it up, right? Because if you look at the schedule, you look at the talent, you look at the strengths, 10-11 wins is realistic. It's not just saying that. Because
that should be the standard.
That should be the standard now because of the way you're recruiting and because of the way you're gaining players from the portal and developing players. So that's as much we're going to do. But
the levels of excitement are here. And I think that is exactly what we're aiming for. I mean, we are less than 10 days away from.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is the last show we're going to do before game week. So that's why we're doing this now.
Yeah,
so it's getting out of the way because I was kind of waiting. I'm like, okay, we have to do this now because we haven't really talked about it and given our real opinions on that. But yeah, I mean, 9-3 is the popular pick. I've seen a lot of fans who have been very negative in the past, very realistic guys going 9-3 is possible. And I like to see that. It's not because if you hear 8-4, it's some rival fan base, including Texas Tech, who I'm like, dude, you're not a Texas A&M rival. I don't know why you're getting in on it.
And we don't need to go into.
I know, right? But I'm just saying, it's just funny to me. I'm like, you can't make that joke. But if you see that, you're just like, oh, they're making a joke. But you see 9-3, you see 7-5, and then you see the double-digit wins. You go, okay, no, this is based in reality. Anyways.
Yeah, tune in next week, guys. We will have an entire preview done on Texas A&M versus UTSA. kind of what is going to be the go-to and ready up for that game.
Yeah.
So
you want to end with the basketball news, because we didn't mention that obviously at the start of the show with Michael here. So
I'm sorry?
You want to end with the basketball news, the new edition, transfer edition?
Oh, yeah. Texas A&M this past week landed Southern Illinois transfer Ali Diva out of the transfer portal, who just got his waiver approved. Now, this is a guy I have been looking at since April, when a lot of guys went into the portal with, they needed the NCAA to rectify some of their playing eligibility, whether that's from the Diego Pavia rule where it was JUCO, or whether it was another injury or anything like that. But this was a guy I got to deep dive a whole lot in the spring when the transfer portal opened up on tape. I really, really do like this guy as a very efficient slasher and spot-up shooter, which is going to work very, very well with what Bucky McMillan is trying to do this season. So a little bit of a nugget along that lines. He's a very, very good wide open shooter. He's a lot of his shots are going to come right at the rim. But yeah, Ollie Dibba from Southern Illinois, 17 point per game, guard. He stands about 6'5", so he can play
big guy,
anywhere in between two. But I have seen him on tape try and guard the smaller level power forwards when he was over with Southern Illinois and Abilene Christian. So
yeah. So I think you and I both believe he's probably going to be contending for that 6-man spot with guys like Shakari Lane, probably in that 7th spot. Again, probably I think you said probably like a 8-point a game type of guy. I think that's the kind of potential he has in this lineup. Obviously going to a bigger conference, but again, I mean, just adding to an already great roster that has to work together. He has to figure out his lineup, how he's going to use it, but you couldn't have asked for a better start for Bucky McMillan. I mean,
I don't think you can.
You can't. And I do think, look back to when he was hired, a lot of people were just saying, get through the season, right? We're not talking about NCAA tournament. No, we're not talking about an NCAA tournament type of roster. And that's not just me. That's John Rothstein. That's others who are very high, because you've got star power with Mackenzie Macombo. You've got a ton of depth, and you pretty much got a guard rotation that just fits perfectly to what he wants to do. So
yeah, definitely. Having been around what this first year of Bucky McMillan and this coaching staff as of right now, since I've been able to get to a practice or two, their sights are set on the NCAA tournament, and not only making it, but trying to be as consistent as possible so they can go deep in that tournament. They have very, very good goals set for them, and they are ready for it now that they have 15 people on their roster.
Hey, maybe they can emulate that Florida type of route. I mean, because they did a similar thing. It was really a transfer-heavy roster. They had a lot of size, obviously, some very good recruits. But again, there's a formula there. A&M has all the resources. I get, well, they're not a basketball school. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You've got a basketball coach. So you've got money behind you. You've got support. Obviously, we saw even last year during the win over number 1 Auburn, the fans, they showed, like, they came out. And especially that young fan base loves basketball. That's what I hear all the time. It's just going to be better. I think the future's very bright with this program, and it's going to be fun to cover it on here. But so we got through a lot today. Obviously, again, thank you to Mike who came on the show.
Big thank you.
Yeah, it's it's just always interesting to talk Notre Dame, because and I've done that throughout my career. There's always very similarly built. It's just the culture there. It's always O-line, good running game, and a quarterback that just doesn't screw things up. It's like good enough. Now, they've had great quarterbacks too, so don't get me wrong there. But yeah, next week it's going to be the first game week here at Voice College Football for all of us at this podcast network, and we're going to be focused on UTSA. I know that their running back is one of Cannon's favorite players, so it's going to be fun to get into that. I think that, it's going to be interesting to talk about A&M's offense versus their defense. I think that's going to be really the main talking point, because I do think that they have some offensive firepower, and, it's one of those games where if A&M makes some mistakes, UTSA could, score a couple points early or have a couple scores early and make things interesting. But I don't think it's going to be the case, but either way, we're going to go over that roster, look at their strengths and weaknesses, and it's now 11 days before Texas A&M faces UTSA. We have made it. We get Iowa State Kansas State this weekend to start week 0, which is a ranked matchup in week 0. Which
Prediction for Farmageddon before we get out.
Go ahead.
What do you think?
Well,
I want a prediction from you.
Well, yeah, Iowa State this year, Rocketback returning, good O-line, decent skill set at wide receiver. I think they'll have a decent running game again. They usually do under Matt Campbell, and I do think the defense is going to be one of the better units in the Big 12 outside of Baylor. But it's going to be interesting, right? Because Avery Johnson with Kansas State, they've been building that program for a while. They do think this is going to be one of their better seasons. They really believe in Johnson, who I believe Colin Klein helped recruit, I think, before he came there. So he's very familiar with him. So, but not Marcel Reed, I wouldn't say that's who he is. He's not as quick. He's not as fast, but he is a runner. I don't know. It's hard. I'll take Iowa State in a close one, like a 20-17 type of game. I think the weather apparently is supposed to be really crappy. It's supposed to be rainy. I think it could be one of those just run the ball at will. None of these guys like to throw a wet ball. Watching the Dallas Cowboys documentary, which is fantastic on Netflix, Troy Aikman was talking about, I can't throw a wet ball. And I'm like, that's every quarterback. So, but yeah, I think Iowa State's going to come out with a win.
You think Iowa State in the close one?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Kansas State, everybody.
Yeah.
Kansas State is going to win that game.
The little Manhattan.
I think they're going to win it by 10 plus.
Yeah, I would say, well, who do you think the leader in the Big 12 is? I mean, I don't pay too much attention anymore, but I think it's probably going to be a mix between K-State, Iowa State, Baylor.
Give me Arizona State to win it again.
Arizona State's the big one. I think they're the clear favorite. I've heard a lot of that, but I think, I should have said that. Arizona State's clear favorite. The other favorites, I think, are those 3 teams. So, but again,
Definitely.
I think it's great that this is the game we get to start, and it's gonna be awesome. So
it's gonna be great.
Yeah. So anyways, so again, next week we're in game week finally. So it's gonna be UTSA preview. So please come back for that one, and always subscribe. Hit that button, man. I mean, we need to grow this network. We're doing a fantastic job. I can really praise everybody who does coverage for Voice of College Football for every team out there. And me and Ken are working hard every week to bring you great content and help you prepare for the game ahead going into the 2020 season. So I'm Cameron Honesty. Yeah, please click that, man. I'm Cameron Honesty. You can follow me at Cameron Honesty at X. You can follow my co-host Cannon at Torres Cannon, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday.